Okay, I am so delighted to have Brenda here. Welcome to the Abundance Club, Brenda. So good to have you here. I
Thank you
was
for inviting me. I'm
Brenda
excited.
and I sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to share because I think this is so synchronistic. We live in the same town, but we don't usually see each other in the national park, but we were going for a walk. I was going for a walk this morning and ran into Brenda a couple of hours before this. So it's amazing because I got to give you a cuddle and a hug, and then here we are.
Real life one, and now we'll sort of hopefully give more people cuddles than today, really, to soothe those nervous systems. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we started earlier today. It kind of has a consciousness.
It does, and it really feels like that we were just getting prepared for this. And you and I go, I was reflecting on it. I think it's almost 5 years when I first started studying holistic counseling with you. And in all honesty, what really impressed me about you immediately was, and I'm quite fussy with facilitators, like I was so drawn to you. And then when we had that first weekend, what so impressed me about you, Brenda, was your wisdom, like not only your wisdom, but this incredible intuition as well, like paired that with your fierceness and your depth. And and it felt like, and it still feels like that you've just lived lifetimes doing this work and you're so doing what you are meant to be doing here, which
At
is,
least 4 decades of being a therapist in some way or another. And I think I started teaching when I was 15. So, and then I
wow.
taught at university psychology when I was 20 and so on. So I started very early. So that's probably the culmination of years and years of being a therapist and a trainer and loving it, really. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And you're such a teacher, like you're such a brilliant teacher. So I feel like we're in for a treat with this episode because you and I always feel like, it has a consciousness of its own. So we're open to what wants to come through this
Yep.
transmission with the both of us, which I love. But one of the things when, there's so many facets of your work that I love and that really drew me into your program. And the experience that I had was incredibly revelatory across so many different areas in studying with you, but none for me quite as profound and transformational as what I experienced with family constellations. So I do want to start there. For someone that's hearing this for the first time, how would you describe what that is and what, in your eyes, really makes this modality so unique and so powerful?
So it's a very difficult modality to describe.
Mhm.
It's maybe I give a story to start with, and then
Yeah,
I can
I love your
go into
stories.
the theory and so on. So most therapy is long term and it's very client focused, whereas family constellation is system focused, as in we're a symptom bearer of something that needs to be seen in the family system, right? So I'll give you an example of that. So I had a client many, many years ago. She was in and out of psych care for about 12 years. She'd self harmed her arms, legs, belly, and she couldn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time. Right. So she came and she was booked out of psych care for the day to come and see me. And I simply did a genogram with her, which is mapping your family, the generations, who did what happened to who, and so on. And up one side of her lineage, her grandfather was Polish. And the story was that he was wrapped up in barbed wire and drowned by the Nazis. Now, if you look at her body, it was so self harm, arms, legs, belly. It looked like her body had been wrapped up in barbed wire. So we did a little systemic or family constellation visualization, and I'll explain more about that later, where we just honored the grandfather. Yeah, we saw him, we gave him a proper burial, added an angel to take care of him. She's never self harmed ever again. Then the next session, she came and saw me. She couldn't sleep for more than 2 hours. And I said, "So who couldn't sleep?" Yeah. She's, oh, my grandmother, she's Polish. And she had 6 or 7 kids. And if you stayed on the trains in World War II, you were either shot, yeah, or but they had to basically run for their lives. Yeah. So in a way, the grandmother hadn't stopped running. Yeah. And so she couldn't sleep more than 2 hours. If you understand running, you don't sleep, it's too dangerous to sleep. Those 6 or 7 kids survived. And so we just honored grandma, in her mind's eye, we said, well, grandma, the war's over and the kids survived. And I'm here because, I'm your granddaughter. Yeah. So you made it. She went home, slept 10 hours and never had a problem since. Okay. So we're the symptom bearer of something that needs to be seen in the family story. So we're part of a family soul. Okay. And that family system has, systemic principles of belonging. So those who belong, belong. No one can be excluded, even if they have, committed heinous acts. They're born into that system or married into the system. Or if they've taken a life, they owe that system. And I know colleagues of mine, Albert Ma, did some work in, was it Sudan, I think it was, and where people who had taken lives had to stay with the families they took lives from and worked for them until the family said enough. Yeah. So your life is, you owe that family for taking a life. So I know in our Western society, we're like, no way, but this is a very collective culture. So we have belonging, which is a systemic principle that governs systems, not just families, organizations as well, so on. And then you have the need for equilibrium. So it's a balance of giving and taking. I give a little, you give a little. Yeah. But it creates, sustains relationships. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's always nice. Like I hurt you a little and you hit me a little bit more. We're still in relationship, unfortunately. Yeah. And so it's the sharing of resources that sustains survival. Yeah. So it's that exchange of resources. If we go back into sort of a more tribal or collective culture, yeah, which was where Bert Hellinger learned about the connection to ancestors. He was a missionary, if you like, in a Zulu tribe. And so he learned the connection to the ancestors. So the need for equilibrium is that balance of giving and taking. Yeah. A little for me today when my crop's good. Yeah. So I give a little, and a little for me tomorrow when my crop's not so good. So it's this beautiful balance of giving and taking. And the other one is social order. So that is the systemic principle of predictability and social order. So those who come first come first. So, me being the eldest of my family, or say 3, I come before my sister and then my brother. And that also means that belonging, children who passed early or miscarried or aborted or stillborn or born still, also included. No one can be excluded because someone in the system will feel as though they don't belong, as a way to include them. They'll have those feelings. If someone's excluded, they'll take on those feelings of that person. And so you're talking about, abundance, right? And so I'll give you an example of this. And I know I'm talking a lot, but
no,
I kind of wanted to talk about this. I had a client years ago, and his business would not succeed. Anything he did, it would fail. Yeah. And I've had a number of these clients, and I looked up in his Geneagram, and his grandfather owned slaves. So his success was at their cost. So they don't look friendly upon the success. And so when we just acknowledged the slaves, he completely lost it and was sobbing. And
Mm.
in a way, we call that hungry ghosts, in the system, someone who will not leave you alone until they're seen and acknowledged. So
Mm.
you can do as much therapy as you like. You can have everything lined up, financially and so on. But if you have a hungry ghost in your system, it will undermine everything. Yeah. And so this is Family Constellations, a phenomenological approach. It's based on we line up our intention. What's the issue here? What's undermining the system? Yeah. What's the dynamics between these people? Yeah. What's the hidden secret? Yeah. Um, I had a client yesterday who said, "You know how you were doing those family constellations, Brendan? You keep saying, looking at my dad, going, is there a child there? Every single
Mm.
time." She said, "Guess what? We've just discovered I've got a big sister." Yeah. So
Mm.
no one can be excluded from the system. Yeah. So it's a systems approach as opposed to a client focus. And what I mean by client focus is that we go, oh, however you are is based on what's happened in your
Mm.
life so far, your beliefs, your experiences, your adverse childhood experiences, the trauma event, attachment and bonding, etc. This is like what happened with all those things: trauma, loss, war, immigration, people died early, previous relationships that weren't honored, secret children, all of that undermine the next generation's success or the generation after that. Yeah.
Mm. It's so profound, isn't it? Because you have been a counselor and psychologist for so long, for a number of years now. So how did this shift things for you within your practice when you've like, I mean, when you speak like this and you go beyond just you and into the whole family system and you talk about the soul of the family, which is really it's very much going beyond this life as well. You
Mm.
see such a limitation there. You see such a limitation in how we can be operating in more of that, I guess, just that kind of clinical setting where it's just about you. So, and this is what I love about your work. How did that shift things for you? And when you now have clients that come to you, I'd imagine that is that somewhere where you go or you find that you will, I mean, I know you do those geograms where you're finding so much information out by the family system. And I guess my other question there for someone who is contemplating this for themselves and things that are showing up in their life, what can be for them some of the signs or indications that they may be a symptom bearer?
Okay, so there's lots of questions there.
Yeah, I know I tend to
Well,
do this.
one of them is, I had a huge private practice, yeah, for a number of years, TV, radio, magazines, etc. And clients were showing up with the same issue over and over again. And I'm a little an impatient therapist. I want quick results. I want my clients to get on with their life and change to happen really quickly. And that's possible. So I went hunting and I want to know why my clients keep showing up with the same issue. Either I'm not a good therapist or there's something missing. And so I started to look at family constellations and how it shifted from client focus to the symptom bearer. Okay. And once I did that, clients stopped showing up with the same issue because
Mm.
that issue wasn't from their experience of life, their lifeline, if you like. It was from the family's lifeline, So that was a game changer. It became
Mm.
very quick therapy, one session, like the other day I had a client and he just kind of got up and left a relationship, and he keeps doing that. It's like I just can't stay, And he said a sentence, and this is kind of like when you have a systemic sentence, it's a bit like Velcro that kind of sticks. And he said, "I mess up everything."
Mm.
And I was like, we were going to do the work on it, and I went, hold on, let's just play, with a little family constellation with this. Who messed up everything?
Mm.
And when we went up into the family system, his great uncle was driving the car with his mum in the car, and he ran through a red light and his mum was killed. So
Mm.
who messes up everything?
Mm.
Yeah. So to answer your question, we might have a feeling or a thought, yeah. Like I had one, or many years ago, it's a sense of I didn't belong, right? So you can ask the question, who doesn't feel as though they belong?
Mm.
Yeah. And then look into the family system of who has that feeling. Yeah. And you can look at them, lovingly and go, I'm beginning to see how it was for you.
Mm.
Yeah. Because you're experiencing their feelings. Yeah. And you have to be a little detective. Yeah. In that it's quite incredible how the symptoms show up. Yeah. Like I had a client who had a serious iron deficiency, endometriosis, and was completely burnt out. So I went, okay, let's have a look at that. Those symptoms are always correct. I don't want to change the symptoms.
Mm.
I want to look in the direction the symptoms are looking.
Mm.
Okay. So we know there's something to do with the utero. Yeah. Because she's got endometriosis and blood loss, iron loss, you know. So I know there's something there. And she was a manager for big companies for other people. And she's like, I can't believe I just manage big companies for other people. Yeah. And she always felt as though she's one of a twin.
Mm.
And so I simply got her to visualize the twin beside her, and she lost it,
Mm.
just sobbing, because it was that systemic principle of giving her twin a place, who died in utero. We don't, they kind of, we start off as a twin and say, the child gets absorbed. So we don't actually know that there was a twin there, but the child who was born does.
Mm.
And so they look and look and look, for this, and it shows up in the symptoms,
Mm.
yeah, of endometriosis. And I'm not saying all endometriosis is caused by that. This is the problem with family constellation. We cannot theorize around it. It's
Mm.
a phenomenological approach. So we set it up, we set up the feeling and the client, and then see the dynamics. And the story gets to be told in that felt sense, in that quantum field, if you like. Yeah.
Now, this part I love because I have experienced this, I have witnessed this. You hold not only in your trainings, but you hold workshops around this where people can
Mm-hmm.
play it out. And I might not be using the right language around that kind of that role playing situation. I'd love for you to talk about that because that was such a profound experience in being a part of that and being, I'm not sure what the word is for that, so you can help me out of that when you are essentially in the place of that particular person or feeling or symptom or whatever it is, how in that instant moment you take on how that person was feeling in, and this is somebody that's likely somebody that has passed.
Mm-hmm.
I had the visceral feeling of that, and I witnessed that in others in that workshop setting. Can you speak a little about that? Because that is extraordinary.
It is. And this is where Bert Hellinger, the founder of Family Constellation, combined his work and understanding of honoring the ancestors and how the ancestors affected the living. So the living affect the dead and the dead affect the living. Yeah. And how he combined it with phenomenology. Now, phenomenology is, if I want to gather information without guessing, we do a lot of guessing, and I'm not real good at that. So I want to know how this person is feeling. So in a group setting, we might choose a representative of someone's mother. If I'm like, I've never had a connection with my mother, I've tried and tried, I don't know why. Yeah. And it might have been affected by trauma or loss in the family system. And I want to talk about that in terms of attachment styles later. So we might just set up a representative for the client, yeah, so they can stand back and look, and a representative of the mother. And all we have to say is, could you represent, my mother, or could you represent me? And because it's combining intention with access to, if you like, the quantum field, yeah, you're using phenomenology. So we make sure that you don't know hardly anything about that person. And the sort of incredible thing is that you take on the symptoms. Yeah. I remember years ago when I was training, someone set me up as their mum, and I started coughing and coughing and coughing. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I just couldn't stop coughing. And the guy whose constellation he said, my mother would always do that to get out of things. Yeah. She just cough and cough and cough. And I'm like, I'd like to stop. And another one, I started coughing and the guy had TB. Yeah. So you just start having this felt sense. You don't actually have to try. It just arises based on the intention and also the permission of the client. Because then you have access when the client gives you permission, and that's really important because we don't go mucking around looking into systems because we'll disturb it. And I want to speak about that in a minute, a bit more. So you have permission from the client to go, yes, we can look at my family system. Now, sometimes family systems are not resourced enough for family constellations. So a family constellation is kind of like a pebble in a pond. We put it in wherever it is in the pond, and it will ripple out into the whole system. Now, we have to make sure that system is strong enough to hold change. So it's really important. We can't shift from a client focus to system counseling without training, without understanding how systems work and respecting the system. Because sometimes we need to honor that a sacrifice is made, for a time for that system because the parents are ill or the system is not strong enough to hold a change. Yeah. And yet the sacrifice can be honored, as in it's to strengthen the client. Yeah. So, and I was talking a little bit before about attachment styles. Okay. So, you have ambivalent anxious, you have avoidantly attached anxious, you have disorganized. They tell us a systemic story. So avoidantly attached, we know there's loss in the system because an avoidantly attached client means that they haven't felt as though they mattered. Yeah, they've kind of been brought up to bring themselves up in a way. Not so much neglect, but there's more focus on looks and achievement, yeah, rather than relationship. So what would pull a parent away from that connection? And it's usually an early death up in the family system. Yeah. And they're internal regulators. So I'll go do me because no one's really available. They're caught up in grief. Okay.
You call them like the island, right?
We island, for avoidantly attached, wave. And this is Stan Tatkin's work. He colloquially, referred to them as island for avoidant and wave for ambivalent anxious. So if we go out to ambivalent anxious system, what would create a person to be ambivalent anxious? So they're an external regulator. They're highly kind of anxious, of course. And it's kind of like you do me. And it's usually trauma that happened. war, event trauma, developmental trauma. Two would also include disorganized, which is trauma as well. There's often violence in the system there. But we can, based on someone's attachment style, the way they talk about feelings and their narrative, we can tell what's happened in the family system, which is pretty cool.
Mm. You also have this incredible intuition, like seeing you at work in those settings where you just get a sense or that there's something here. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that's developed? Because I think that makes you an incredible therapist in the way that you can sense and feel what's going on and really what's alive. And you spoke about when you change that, it's changing that in the system and in the quantum, which just is such a great remembrance of how we are we're all so connected and everything that we're playing with here is energy. So talk to me about, I would love to know how you develop that for yourself as well and how that works through you, because it's quite phenomenal watching you work in that way.
Sure. So I just want to address that, our interconnectedness, because
Mm,
I see us more like trees and plants than our
mm,
current definition of being human. We're so connected. It's that little, my myceliums going out into the ethers. And, sometimes we have feelings that we're just like, where have they come from? Especially when there's so much war right now. We're very unsettled. So when you look at it from that perspective, how does those myceliums go up into the system? Yeah. Whose voice have I got? Whose feeling am I,
mm, mm,
feeling as such? So I just want to contemplate that as such. Um, I don't, in answer to your question about my intuition, I don't want to make it special because I train people to do that,
mm, mm,
to see beyond just what we're being told. So it's very trainable.
mm,
Yeah? I've just been a therapist for a very long time, so it's very quick now. But it's this ability to see and open your focus to see beyond just the individual and see what they're attached to, what's influencing them. I mean, Dr. Jane Peterson created this whole modality called somatic imaging, where you look at a body and you can read the family story by, coming a little close and activating the story, the somatic story. Yeah. Because our body is the family story. If you think about it, I was in I was there when my grandmother was born. Yeah, in terms of, eggs and embryos and so on, so I was there.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So in terms of feeling into the knowing field that a client comes with, we watch everything. We watch the way they sit in the chair. We watch marked words. We watch their
mm,
breath. Their breath has a whole story in it. We have this term blip, breathing levels indicate permission. So, a releasing breath means there's a change made. A closing breath is, there's a hot spot there. There's trauma there. Yeah. There's resistance. So we want to
mm,
backtrack and unpack that. Where the client looks. Yeah, they might look downwards. Okay, are they looking at the dead ones?
mm,
Yeah? The words they say and the frames they use, and this is George Lakoff's work. Um, Reading faces, reading bodies. Your body is the family story. So, what story is it telling? I mean, I've seen clients when I'm doing family constellation, whole one side of their face becomes their grandmother. And then we
yeah.
shift in the constellation to the grandfather and a whole other side of their face. And it's so fascinating to watch. It's like the other day, I had a client who had severe ulcerative colitis. Yeah. And, to the point she was about to be hospitalized like the next day and on, steroids and everything, couldn't eat, etc. And I'd seen her for one session, and we did some stuff, some stress stuff, and then stress work. And then the next time I said, right, we're going to do some family constellations on this ulcerative colitis. And she has a Polish background, and there was a lot of war. And I actually saw the energy leave her body.
Mm.
And I haven't seen that in my career. And then when I saw her 2 weeks later, I said, how's your ulcerative colitis? She said, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I knew the moment it moved out, it was gone. Yeah. And I think this is where, family constellation at times blends with the shamanic work. Yeah. And it's not psychodrama. So it's not about role playing. It's about that setting up the representatives based on phenomenology. Yeah.
And the
So
way that as you're talking, and as you're describing this, you're just expanding into this field. And I love the way that you're describing. It's like it's all alive here. We've been so used to dealing with just the person and the mind and the persona and our body. And we're
mm,
understanding more and more and more about just how vast we are within our consciousness and how many stories are interwoven in that. Coming back to the symptom bearer, and whether you touched on this or not, are these, would you say, almost like some contracts that we make within the family, within the soul system before we come in? I know you spoke about certain agreements and so forth. And is it, and you'll be able to explain what that is it then in order for us to be able to heal and release that and discover something more about ourselves, because obviously it's coming up to be noticed and to be healed, and we're healing the whole system here.
yeah.
So can you go into that? Is there something around something contractual that we choose or we decide before coming in, would you say? Or
It's more that the system looks to find someone to represent the issue.
hmm.
It's not contractual, because then we're not really looking at a system as a whole. We're looking at an individual. Whereas the system goes, well, I need someone to represent this.
And how does it choose who then represents that?
I have no idea.
Mm. Mm.
That's beyond my, you know, my wisdom. You kind of get, like, sometimes if there's a woman that's needed to be represented in a system, then and there's only boys, then you might have someone because start taking on feelings of a woman. Yeah,
Mm. Mm.
because there's no female in the system to represent. So I don't know, it just randomly picks, people.
Mm.
Like I had a two clients, they're brother and sister, and their grandmother was Jewish, and she'd seen her entire family shot. Okay.
Mm.
Now, one person cannot handle that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it missed a generation. And then the grandchildren started looking for her, and they were going a little crazy.
Mm.
So it's more about, I will do it for you so you don't have to.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's kind of taking on people's fate to relieve the system in order to survive. Yeah. And we have a saying, everyone's fate is their own. But often, out of blind love, children will take on a parent's fate, and they will even die for the parent,
Mm. Mm.
unfortunately. If
Mm.
they go, I will leave so you don't have to, yeah,
Yeah.
to relieve the system, unfortunately. Yeah. Or or they're pulled to death, through what we call hungry ghosts or family secrets, or so on. So I don't have the answer to that,
Mm.
but someone's needed in order to represent.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
And yeah, I mean, I had a mum come and see me a number of years ago, and her 13-year-old daughter, I think it was, just couldn't sleep. And when we looked in the genogram, her grandfather, so the mother's father, um, was in Vietnam, in the Vietnam War. And if you sleep, you die, basically.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm,
And someone slept.
mm,
So, it shows up in the symptom to tell the story of those who died. And once we've told that story, the system rests and we don't have to be the symptom bearer anymore.
mm.
So the symptom goes like that. And it can take, a day, it can take in a moment, it can take, up to 2 years for that change to be made. Yeah. But often we're seeing something in a constellation like, oh, was there sexual abuse here? No, no, no. You know, and then it's been revealed like a year later. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
the story I told before is like, oh, is there a child missing in this? And then boom, years later, yes, I've got a big sister. So
It's so beautiful. It's so healing. And I've had that experience myself in receiving that, like having a constellation. I think I've now had it on both sides of my family and having that, and I think it was from something to do with my father. And it was just so transformational. I think it was within that kind of 2 year period where all of a sudden you go, oh, that doesn't exist anymore. That
yeah,
dynamic doesn't exist anymore.
yeah,
And it just feels very complete
yeah.
and loving, and that feeling of really being seen and acknowledged, which
Mm,
is so beautiful. And I think, so much of us here, even here in this living three-dimensional world, we prioritize our belonging over everything, right? Like
yeah.
for our survival, we prioritize that belonging over often our truth and our
Mm.
authenticity. And talk about
Yeah.
how that plays out a little bit, because I just
Well,
think that,
we would rather suffer to belong.
mm,
Yeah. And there was something else I was going to say in there. Oh, I can't remember. Sorry.
it'll
But,
pop back in.
in terms of a system, it oh, that's what I was going to say is that there's when we work with a client from a client focused, there's a lot of shame that tends to happen. Oh, there's something wrong with me because I
Yeah.
can't change this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And family constellation, because it works from a system focus, goes, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. I was
Yeah.
doing my grandmother's feelings around men or around money or so on. It's like, oh my goodness. Because if we keep going from a client focused and we can't change it, then the client goes, well, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it avoids that shaming clients for a start. Okay. And then you had another part of the question. Sorry, you have to ask
No,
it.
and then that was about belonging. It was about
Oh,
belonging
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
That would rather suffer to
Mm,
belong.
mm,
And that's what we call group conscience. So there's three types of conscience. There's personal conscience in terms of my values of what's good and bad or right and wrong. And then we have group conscience. Yeah. And you would have seen that in COVID, in terms
mm.
of values.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how it divided and how people were rejected because of their, values. Okay. And how painful that was because some
Mm,
people were rejected from their whole families from their values. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
we would rather belong, yeah, and suffer than be excluded because it's very painful.
Mm,
And then there's spiritual conscience, and that's beyond group and personal conscience. And that's kind of moving with the field, if you like, as in, there's a bigger force that I live by, you know? Like an example of this would be a friend of mine wanted to borrow a projector, yeah, from me. It was an $800 projector, and she thought, oh, it's great. I'll put it outside for my 60th. And I went, there's
yeah.
no movement in me to put it outside. And she yelled and screamed at me. I said, sweetheart, I would if there was a movement to, but there's no movement for me to put it
Mm,
outside. And my son beside me said, it'd be funny if it rains in 10 minutes. Of course, it rained in 10 minutes.
Mm.
Yeah. So it goes with a movement. We follow a movement that's bigger than belonging to
Yeah.
a group or being socially acceptable. It's something deeper, yeah,
Mm. Mm.
that pulls us into, devoting our life to therapy, say, for instance, or,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
whatever
Mm.
it is, there's something that moves us. It's deeper. Yeah.
Yeah, and having the courage, it feels like it's a real courageous act and a rebellion to honor your truth and your authenticity
Hmm.
over that need to be accepted and belonging and to trust in that. So it's
I think
actually quite.
Yeah, I think the key is trusting it. Yeah.
Mm,
I
mm,
wouldn't say it's rebellion because it's a drive that we either argue with
mm,
or we open to.
mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm.
But it's that real trust that wants you.
Yeah, yeah. And I loved how you had that feeling, like there's nothing in me. I'm not leaning in to
Hmm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, watching for that movement. And I think that's a lovely way to live your life is
Yeah.
like, is there a movement to do it? And watch your body because your body's way faster than your mind. If you ever want to know what you should
Mm,
be doing, watch what your body's doing.
mm,
Is it
mm,
going there or is it kind of going in the opposite direction?
mm, mm.
Personally, I'd go with my body. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
we're more like, trees and connected to so many systems that our conscious mind has no idea
yeah,
about.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
sometimes you don't know why you're doing what you're doing until it shows up.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I mean, and that's like just being in nature and becoming more embodied and learning to trust that over the prioritization of the mind and the intellect, like we've been kind of
Yeah.
led to believe in society that's favored that over our true body wisdom. So I think it's really beautiful coming back to that.
And
What?
I think just to interrupt, sorry,
Mm, mm,
I think, one of the things we do not honor, maybe that's a whole entire podcast,
mm,
um, is that nature, we're wired to nature. Okay. When we go out to nature for, 3 days, it completely rewires our nervous system.
mm,
And so it is the big mother. And in terms of attachment theory, we really, in the Western culture, have really missed the whole point. We've orientated ourselves to people, which is great, but it always fails in some way or another. We get disappointed, or, parents, are limited. We're strengthened by our families or weakened by our families. So, one of the things that we can do is like, okay, how would it be if I embed myself into opening to the big mother?
mm,
Yeah,
mm,
as a way of healing that holds my mother and her mother and so on and so on. Yeah. So, in terms of attachment, we can start to use and call upon that and open to that as a bigger resource. And it's
mm,
something that we would do in a family constellation is we we can use it as a resource,
mm.
yeah, especially if people have been disorganized or disorganized attached and they've had very, very little positive parenting experiences. We want to give them a big resource. Yeah.
So beautiful. I've had that experience too of nature being brought in or an angel being brought in and resourced in that way. And you can immediately feel the shift and
Yeah.
the support of that, which is just it's just wild. And I know myself, anytime I do like what we were doing this morning with walking out in nature and being in the national park, it's like everything is okay.
Yes.
Everything is like a reset button.
Mhm.
And you're just reminded that everything is okay. Like you're just hugged by the Great Mother. I think it's so, so beautiful. Coming back to then the attachment theory with that, for someone that's newer to this work and wanting to understand, where they predominantly are. And again, we are essentially moving towards that secure attachment.
I hope so.
Can you speak about that? Because you're so brilliant at that. And I know that you do, I don't know whether you still do, or you've had certainly had that experience in working with couples as well
Yeah.
in relationships. So what do you love so much about this work and what you feel so passionate about sharing?
Well, I can combine the two. So I was trained with Dr. Stan Tatkin, who is the founder of the approach for couple therapy. And that's really looking at the neuroscience of connection, of attachment theory, and arousal regulation. Okay, so it's how we trigger each other off in our nervous system. What happens in the towards and away. How do we sustain the connection? What pulls us away? So, when I'm working with couples, and I just love working with couples, is,
Mhm.
there might be a pull, but then something else says no. And who's that voice? Yeah. And, it could be someone's mother's voice. So we could have adverse childhood experiences where, like, I have a couple who very, very academic, doctor, a nurse, so on. And when they come towards, you can see their nervous system, what they do. Now, that movement in the nervous system of, going away like that, that is an entire story.
Mm.
So when I unpack that entire story, it belongs to a dynamic, yeah, either a parent-child dynamic or an entire story of what happened to the parent. So
So you're weaving the two together, the
that,
family constellation.
ah,
It's like
beautiful. Yeah, it's
the
like,
magic sauce.
yeah, definitely. And I can't remember the couple's name, but years ago I trained in tango constellations. So we'd do the tango, and the tango is a dance of surrender. Yeah. So if we couldn't surrender, what was stopping us from doing that? And we constellate that, you know. And I grew up with, in a way, in violence. So I want the idea of surrendering. You can kiss that goodbye.
Yeah.
It's like,
Mm.
okay, let's work with that and take that away so I can be present in the relationship. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Mm.
really that's what we're doing, is like, what stops us from creating that secure functioning relationship, that beautiful couple bubble, that we gig, yeah, rather than a pro self gig or a me gig. And maybe we do a whole nother webinar on this, because it's
Yeah, I know. And I loved when I didn't think that I would, but the way that you teach it and Stan Tatkin's work, I mean, I loved this, the couple bubble. And actually, I had a few nights away from my husband over the weekend, and I really, really felt on the last day when I came home. And so this is one of the things that I loved from that was the welcome home hug.
yeah,
And you speak about that co-regulation.
yeah.
And I just needed to hold him when I came back in for a really long time. And he even pulled away. I was like, no, 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 I'm not done yet. Can you speak about that? Because I found that, and people that I have shared that with as well have just found that so beautiful.
Yeah, so it's combining attachment theory and neuroscience, yeah, in that we're in this culture of you do you, especially, Australian culture is very avoidantly attached,
Yeah.
yeah. So you do you and I do me, yeah. So I'm trying to regulate my nervous system all by myself, lots of meditation, lots of walks, and I can't. The reality is we're wired to each other, yeah.
Mm.
We're wired to pair bond, yeah, in whatever configuration that looks like, and to be soothed by another. So you're talking about is welcome home hugs. Is that the moment someone comes into the house, you seek each other out and you hug, and you don't let go until you're completely relaxed. Okay. And I want to talk about it in terms of attachment style and family constellation. And so an avoidant will go, oh yeah, that's great. Now I'm off. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And then
he's
ambivalent
an
anxious
avoidant.
are like, "Yeah, I feel abandoned." So anxious feels very swamped. Yeah. It's like, whoa, that's too much. Yeah. And ambivalent anxious will go, I need more. Yeah. Because they're
That's me.
external regulators. Okay. So the key is here that just before the avoidant goes, yeah, I'm done now, you let go. And the avoidant go, where are you going? And they'll hold on
Mm,
longer. And then you
mm,
go, ah, there.
mm.
So you're using, attachment theory, but you're using each other's nervous system to regulate each other's nervous
Yeah.
system because we're wired to each other. There was this whole concept of, in the 90s, some psychologists got together and went, right, well, you have to be really, really independent before you get into a relationship. You have to have all your stuff together, so on. And, if you're not, then, you're really just sort of coupling with your parent in some way or another. And it was very much based on the AA, codependency was very much based on the AA model. But they forgot an entire equation. Biologically, we're not wired like that. It's a
Mm,
very independent cultural frame, okay? And it doesn't work like that. We were sold a very bad idea,
mm,
okay?
mm.
And I'm not talking about codependency here, where my whole identity is caught up in someone else's. I'm talking about really co creating a couple bubble, yeah? A we system that we're both devoted to the team, yeah? So what is good for me has to be good for you. Yeah. Otherwise, it's not a team gig. It's very pro self in some way.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
And so, how am I adding to the system and how am I taking away from the system? Yeah.
And when you talk about system, are you meaning the couple system, like
Yeah.
as its own
The team.
entity? Yeah.
Yeah. The team, the couple. So, and all of that walks in a way of connection, in terms of attachment styles, are affected by our experiences of attachment and bonding growing up. Did we have a swamping parent or a neglectful parent? Do we have one that we looked after if we're ambivalent, anxious, which relates to the family system? Yeah.
Mm,
So if we can address that, it's kind of like, I change something up here in the family system and I watch that flow and support ripple down into the system so the couple doesn't have to play that out.
yeah.
Yeah?
No.
So you're kind of looking at it on a number of levels. You're looking at it from the psychobiological approach, but you're also looking at it from embedded in that is the attachment theory, yeah, which is embedded in the family constellation in a the systems approach.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying we're like trees than our current definition of humans.
It's so beautiful. And I don't know whether I heard you say that, you know, because is it because you're in that relationship with that person that becomes, and you're living with that person, and you're choosing that conscious relationship, that becomes the best person to co-regulate with. I mean, I'm imagining we're doing it in many different ways with our children and maybe with friends and so forth. So what is it about that? Because I know for me, it just felt like home. It just felt like straight away I was able to relax. So I guess there's all different things there around just feeling safe and
Yeah.
feeling that sense of belonging, and that comes into it as well. Yeah,
I
from
think
a
it goes back to what is the agreement you have with each other.
mm,
Yeah. Like often, relationships just go in and go, oh yeah, I love you and you're sexy, you're great. Come on, let's go. Yeah. But there's no rules of engagement
mm,
that co-create a secure functioning relationship. Relationships are business.
mm,
Yeah. You're sharing time, you're sharing assets, you're sharing a house, often, etc., etc. Yeah. You want rules of engagement. And they
mm,
can be, you will be the first to know if I have a problem with you, not the second or third. Yeah.
mm,
I will protect you in public. Yeah. Even if I'm the one causing the problems. I will repair even if I hurt you. I will
Yeah.
repair quickly so it doesn't go into long-term memory. So we have what we call 10 commandments, or Stan Tatkin calls them. They're governing principles.
Mm,
We also
mm,
have principle or rules on fighting fair. No threatening the relationship, no name calling, no yelling and screaming, especially if you're conflict avoidant. Some people like it, you know. All that to create a secure, functioning relationship. Now, if I break one of those rules, I expect my ass to be kicked.
mm,
Yeah,
mm,
because I've taken away from the relationship.
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
And but so again, what am I bringing to the relationship? If we do it the other way, where we go pro self,
Yeah.
well, you're not doing this and you're not doing this, I can guarantee it will break down,
Yeah.
because you have values differences, you have you want someone to do something rather than let's create this we gig that we're both committed to taking care of.
Yeah.
And it's not you're the problem, it's we have a problem communicating.
Yeah.
We have a problem making it safe for each other. Yeah, not you are the problem. Because I
Mm.
can guarantee if someone says you're the problem, they're going to get a good fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what you see, right? For those relationships that aren't able to continue on, that do fall apart, it's been very much me and very independent, and then nobody's looking after like this third entity, which is your
No, and
couple.
we're co-creating that third entity, so that looks after us.
Mm,
You've got
mm,
things like
mm.
welcome home hugs, connection rituals, and there's a few of those on my website articles that I've written about, 10 ways of sustaining that relationship and communication and connection rituals
Mm.
that then look after you. If you commit to that, and it's not much time. So for the avoidant, they go, oh my God, really? Do I have to, commit to showing up every day? The reality is, if you do in those short periods of time, you have a lot of space in between.
Mm,
So
mm,
it actually gives you more space.
mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm.
Which avoidance kind of, I have to show up. So they struggle with that. Yeah. But if they do, the reward is huge.
They have to come off their island and participate. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that analogy. I think that's so cool. So
Yeah.
just kind of wrapping up, you have worked with obviously what thousands of people over the years. So if you had one thing that you feel right now that feels most alive that you would want people to know or to remember about their own capacity to heal,
Mm-hmm.
what would that be?
It's a very big question.
Mm,
I mean, in terms of family constellation, I would say your body is your family story.
yeah.
So what story is it trying to tell? Whose story is it trying to tell? When you look at the symptoms, who does that point to? And
Mm,
how would it be if you said, ah, grandma, grandpa, I'm beginning to see how it was for you. Yeah.
mm,
So in terms of healing, bring it to system focus and see if you're a symptom bearer of something that needs to be seen
mm.
in the family story. Yeah.
And it's also alive there, isn't it? Right? It's the answers are here. They're alive in your.
Oh, yeah, you just have to put the detective hat on and it's right there.
Mm, mm,
So I mean, I remember a student of mine, or a client of mine actually, before she became a student, and she'd been together with her partner for 5 years, and he'd asked her to marry her, and she was like so excited. And the next day she went into terror, and we went, who would be terrified of getting married? And we looked up in the family constellation, and on her marriage day, the day she got married, her husband said, hey, by the way, I've got a mistress and she's pregnant.
mm.
So who would be terrified of marriage?
Wow.
And that was, Italian Catholic.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't get out of the marriage kind of thing. So, whose story are those symptoms telling?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That are alive in
Because,
you. Yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of
Yeah.
putting that detective hat on. So,
And so then for someone who wants to go deeper into this, can you talk about what you offer, how you can support someone, whether that's one-to-one or whether that's in more of a group program,
Sure.
or yeah, what have you
Sure.
got to?
So we have groups. We have an online one. I've got one on coming up in September, where we'll use, because the form is not the work. You don't actually have to do a group. So we do constellations with plasticine,
Mm,
yeah, and map our family story, right? So the form is not the work in terms of group representation, but the systemic principles of belonging, social, and equilibrium are the work. So we do online, group work, face to face in Melbourne and Brisbane, yeah, and probably more next year. And then we train facilitators. And we're a bit different in that we don't train just master apprentice style. We completely break down the neuroscience, the chair work, words of worlds, frames, reading faces, reading bodies, all the chair work,
mm,
and then all the floor work, like the towards in a way, the position, the eye movement, the breath, everything. We break down every single part of Family Constellation. And Dr. Jane Peterson and I co-created that course. And so, facilitators then know why they're doing what they're doing when they're doing it. Yeah, and it makes them exceptional facilitators. And the reason I did that is because I want to look after family systems. I don't want facilitators just, poking out of curiosity, because we can't do a family constellation out of curiosity.
mm,
We're throwing way too many pebbles in the pond, and it affects the system. And we have to have the deepest respect for those
mm, mm.
and the way they've survived. So
I think that's what's so beautiful about the way that you approach it, is that there's so much reverence and respect for it. And I just think that, yeah, from what I know about it, that is so, so important. So I
hmm.
will pop all of those details in the show notes. And what is the best way then for people to connect with you if they want to either work with you or go into holistic counseling with you or the family constellations?
So the website awakening.com.au, there's contact. There's also information on all the courses. There's articles on family constellation and, attachment styles and relationship issues that we've talked about. So that would be the best way, awakening.com.au.
Okay, beautiful. And
Yeah.
I'll put all
And
those
we weave
details.
it into our holistic counseling training as well. And,
Yeah.
in many different ways, in terms of working with illness, working with the body, working with archetypes, internal family systems therapy. I mean, I developed a number of techniques, as I know you've told
Mm.
everyone, based on family constellations that were very unique. So, yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, it is transformational. It is beautiful. And you know, Brenda, I could like sit and listen to you talk all day. I mean, and I have for many days, but I love it because you have so many wonderful stories and you're so great at remembering the stories and the details. And I think that it's such a powerful way to learn, through that storytelling, and you do that so beautifully. So this is just such a powerful episode, and it was such a delight to have you here and your incredible
I could probably
wisdom.
talk for days too.
And I love that. I mean, I feel like, as you said, there were so many different areas that were touched on that could dive into a whole nother episode in and of itself.
Yeah, like, nature, a great book would be Florence Williams' Nature Fix, or Blue Mind by Wallace Nichols, just to, and even Philip Shepard's work on, I can't remember the name of it, but he talks about that really opening the body, that
Mm.
felt sense, that, connectedness. Yeah. So.
And it's so important for our nervous system. And if we're really wanting to do the work in expanding, we have to feel safe in that
Yeah.
within the nervous
And I
system.
think I think orientating ourselves into connecting with nature and letting nature regulate our nervous system is a great start if people are dysregulated. Yeah,
Mm, mm, mm.
because we're trying to regulate with people at the moment, which is great, but we're sort of a bit disconnected in many ways. And so let's start with nature and then bring people into that space. And yeah.
tree hugging isn't just for the hippies. Not that I've got anything wrong with hippies because I'm kind of one myself, but like I'm honestly like when we go out into nature walks, I am encouraging my kids like actually put your body on that tree, actually feel that
Yeah.
tree, and you are getting a whole upgrade through your whole body. So,
But there's never a disconnection. I remember because I was one of the top tantra teachers in the 90s in Australia. And I remember when I did a lot of tantra, it's like I would walk out on the beach going, "Oh, I can feel the dolphins. Okay, let's play. One, two, three," and then jump out. So
mm,
one of the things I
mm,
really got is there's never a get disconnection. It's like, how do I bring myself into that alignment? And
mm,
I know we're as a group, it's like as an abundance club, how do we bring ourselves into alignment? And that's where what's out of alignment in family systems, where I'm the symptom bearer, and how am I out of alignment with my own truth? We're talking about spiritual conscience
mm.
and into my connection with self, bigger mother, family, etc., etc. So yeah.
And what's beautiful about this too, if, for someone that's listening that feels like, I don't even know where to start and this feels overwhelming, what you just said then with, as you'd mentioned, intention is everything, and having that intention to come back into alignment, life is going to show you.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's through the relationship dynamics and patterns or something here that just feels sticky with my partner or this friendship, or whether
Yeah.
it's something that's being shown in my body, like you can trust that life is going to present that to you for you to be then able to work
Or
with.
just to ask,
Yeah.
ask life, please show me what this is connected to.
Mm, mm,
Whose story am I, living? Whose
mm,
voice is this?
mm,
Whose feeling is this?
mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm,
So, and I can go on with many, many, many stories
mm,
about this. Some of them I wrote in the article. I will do it for you, even if it cost me my happiness. So it's an article on the website, awakening.com.au, just to highlight some of those dynamics. But again, like, we're trying to get rid of something. So what happens in the system is it goes, I have this, I don't want this. But the
mm.
family goes, well, that's how it is. And so as much therapy as you do, it will not change it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the problem with client focused therapies. We shame the client going, well, there must be something wrong with you.
Yeah. And
And actually,
emphasizing the problem.
the symptoms are always correct.
Mm, mm. So your approach then is more about that acknowledgement, that welcoming it, seeing where it belongs to complete that whole system.
Or looking in the direction of the symptom.
Mm, mm,
Where does it look? Yeah.
mm, mm.
Mm.
So, so, so fascinating. I love it.
So we don't want to change the symptom. We want to stand beside it and look at who's looking at.
And it feels like when you say that too, it's really honoring it.
Yeah.
We're not rejecting it. We're not abandoning it. It's really honoring that as a teacher in itself.
Everything has its place.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And it's
beautiful.
the wisdom of the system and the body and the family soul that's trying to tell the story.
Mm, mm, yeah, we just need to open our eyes and our hearts and be available to listen
Yeah.
and pay attention. Yeah,
And the body is the family story.
yeah, beautiful. Such a beautiful note to finish on. Thank you so much, Brenda. I'll pop all those details in the show notes. It's just been a delight. I so appreciate you and your time. So thank you so
Uh,
much.
Thank you for letting me speak about some of my things I'm most passionate about. So thank you
You
for the
do it so well. Thanks,
thank
love.
you.